Let's get into our panel now with Christy McSweeney, Managing Director of PR Council, and also 2CC breakfast host Stephen Senatiempo in Canberra. Thanks both for joining us. Christy, let's get your thoughts first. An amazing story this week when it comes to people smugglers. People smugglers that are apprehended by Australian authorities, sometimes handed back to Indonesia. They don't face charges in Australia, and they don't face prosecution in Indonesia either. This is obviously not good enough, and good on James Paterson for saying we should be able to do something about this. We should be able to charge them in our country if they're not going to be prosecuted in their home country.
Certainly, I don't know how many examples of people who we do hand back that commit crimes or are found to commit crimes against Australian law on Australian soil or in Australian waters that we hand back to their home country that are not prosecuted. But I'm sure that it seems to be a significant problem if it's been raised by Senator Paterson. This is absolutely against the relationships of intelligence sharing around combating people smuggling that we have with Indonesia, around a number of defence and operational intelligence sharing that we have. It flies in the face of the good faith endeavours of Australia to work with Indonesia on people smuggling. If we're simply catching people here in Australia and handing them back to the Indonesians and they're not facing prosecution, there is no deterrent for people to not go out and continue engaging in these practices. Yeah,
it's just nuts, isn't it, Stephen? It's a classic example of how Indonesia can let us down sometimes in this relationship. But obviously, there's been at least one confirmed case recently. So this bloke goes back to Indonesia. Why wouldn't he just get another boat and give it another crack?
Yeah, and look, I guess from the Indonesians' perspective, they'd rather that we look after the problem of the people smugglers, not only the people smugglers, but the asylum seekers themselves, than they have to. But I think Senator James Paterson's idea of charging them here on Australian soil, you wouldn't have to charge or lock up too many of them for the message to get back to say that, hey, this isn't the way to do things. The reality is that when you send a message to the people smugglers that we are soft, and that's what we're doing at the moment, this is the kind of, the boats start again. And I think the idea of actually charging them on Australian soil and maybe even locking them up here is a good move, because it sends the message back that, shut the business down, because if you arrive in Australia, you will get sent to jail. You'd only have to lock 3 or 4 of them up and that'd be it.
Yeah, indeed. Let's get on to the climate wars, what the left like to call the climate wars, the climate and energy debate. We've been talking about it for 20 years, but I'm glad it's on, Christy, because it's about a real policy issue that matters to this country.
Well, it's about a real problem that matters to Australians, Chris, and finding a policy solution that's realistic, that's not over-promising, and that's quite frankly not setting Australia up to fail domestically and internationally. I think it's demonstrated that it's a fallacy that we can get to 80-odd% of renewable energy by 2030. We have the government absolutely failing to negotiate with industry on a transition plan. They seem to be implementing these targets by stealth. We have a number of other countries around the world that are arguably going to fail as well, and people can't pay their bills.
Yeah, Labor seem to think it's a great argument for them, but I reckon this is exactly the argument Peter Dutton wants. Here he is today.
We know that with the energy policy, which is a complete train wreck, the renewables-only energy policy of the government, it's driving prices up. At the next election, it will be about who do you trust to bring your electricity prices down. It will be about who do you trust to manage the economy and to deal with the cost of living crisis that Labor's created. It will be about who do you trust to deal with the housing crisis that Labor has created in our country.
Yeah, Stephen, almost a campaign slogan lines there from Peter Dutton, but this is an argument he wants because Labor's record is abysmal.
Absolutely, and I think the difference in the arguments is stark. He's saying, who do you trust to bring your energy prices down? They're saying, who do you trust to meet some pie-in-the-sky target that has been set by somebody else? And the reality is with these targets, and what really annoys me about this is it's such a non-debate because none of the targets are achievable and they mean nothing. They're not scientific, based in science. They're plucked out of somebody's backside, and it's almost like two kids in the schoolyard, arguing about whose bike is faster. Forget about targets and emissions. Let's talk about cleaner energy and keeping the lights on. And that's what Peter Dutton is saying. I'll bring your energy prices down, I'll keep the lights on, and yeah, we'll be environmentally friendly in the process, but let's not get bogged down in these numbers that mean nothing.
Well, as I showed at the top of the program, the debate about the 2030 target is absolutely meaningless. It's a drop in the ocean when it comes to global emissions, and it just actually scientifically means nothing. But Labor and the Greens and the Teals are pretending it's going to lead to some sort of climate Armageddon. It's embarrassing for them. They're taking voters for absolute mugs. But Christy, you're in Victoria at the moment. There's one story that caught my eye. In the last 24 hours was about a survey of people being worried about blackouts, and they're showing that Victorians are more worried about blackouts than others. Now, this is obvious, right? Because Victoria has faced blackouts on hot days, and it's in Victoria and South Australia where they're most exposed to those summer heat waves and a lot of wind energy, not enough coal and gas left. Queensland and New South Wales, much less likely to get these blackouts for now because there's still a lot of reliable generation around. But come February and March in Victoria and South Australia, look out.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, governments are worried about running out of power as well, and that not resonating with the net zero targets that Labor governments have set for themselves. And just on the last point, one thing that Peter Dutton didn't say in response to the Prime Minister's press conference yesterday was that Labor is in the business of extending the life of coal-fired power stations. And that, above anything else, demonstrates the fact that we do not have enough baseload power in this country. Victorians know it, and South Australians know it too, because Victoria, they're drawing from the grid from Victoria. This is a state that has banned gas. This is a state that has banned fracking and coal seam gas. This is a state that won't touch the exploration of its gas reserves. Again, to meet targets that the state possibly can't meet to cater for the growing population. Yeah,
we're out of time, but Stephen, I know you can sit there smugly knowing in the ACT you're using 100% renewable energy, which is absolute. Stephen Senatiempo and Christy McSweeney, thanks very much. Of course, the ACT can't run on 100% renewable. They have a lead in getting that coal-fired power from New South Wales when things run low.